If your child has lived in a city, had a ton of baby wipes, wiping their bum since the day they were born, used disposable diapers, or if you've even just been using household cleaners where they've been crawling, walking barefoot, and their skin has been touching the floor or different surfaces, then you don't have to guess. And you don't necessarily need testing to know if your child's liver is overburdened. You can pretty much bet it is. So, why is this? So, first of all, hi, my name is Natalie Pelto. I am the co founder of Blue Life RX, and I am the creator of the Blue Life Autism Program. And in this case, I am pulling a little bit from my detox specialty in focusing on understanding a little bit more of your child's liver. And so, the liver is the body's main detoxification organ. Now we know that there's a lot of other organs that have their own detoxification purposes, but our kids today are born pretty much in a chemical soup. And between air pollution, which we now know is linked to elevated autism rates, flame retardants on our bedding and and just basically covering every piece of furniture that we get. And this looks like it shows up on testing as antimony. And then even our skincare, our white Johnson and Johnson products, all of these pile into the liver's workload before they're even walking. And so a child that is born, we used to say, is born in a clean slate. And although that is true, what we've discovered recently, or not, well, so what we used to believe was that a child was born with a clean slate. And truly, what actually is happening and has pretty much recently been discovered is that our detoxification capacity actually grows as we do. With micro exposures, it becomes better. And so when we look at our grandparents and even our parents, the environment that they lived in was actually much less toxic than the environment that we live in today. And so our children are being exposed to a much larger amount of toxins. And to put that into perspective, we're looking at about 80,000 toxins that kids are being exposed to, versus this is just made in the last probably about 50 years. These are all man made, they're for our convenience, but many of them are being removed from the ability for human consumption because of BBAs and the discovery that many of these actually were not ever tested properly for us to be using in the ways that we are using them. So, for many kids with autism specifically, that load is heavier because their detox pathways are already overburdened, whether it be from a leaky gut or gut issues. And everything is already a little bit sluggish in there. And that means that toxins linger longer and cause more symptoms that aren't necessarily autism symptoms, they are actually toxicity symptoms. So, for those of you who would love to know, how do we know that our child potentially has a toxicity in their liver without testing? And I think it's really important because we're in the age of information and data, and we are doing more and more studies around these topics. And when we look at studies, right, and we're looking at large groups of people that we see a very commonality, why do we feel that we need to necessarily test? And I think that testing is great if you're a family that absolutely needs that. And again, like we do, we are building out programs to provide that. But the idea is that we know just by exposure and by symptoms what is happening within the body. If we are just able to pause and take inventory, everybody wants to get a blood test, get a stool sample, get a liver enzyme test. And it really can only tell you a part of the story, whereas a child's symptoms can tell you a huge component. So, why we focus a lot on helping families become more of the clinician in their home, more of the healer of the home, so that they can reconnect to the basically the lost language of the human body. As humans, we've let a lot of our own intuition, and not even intuition, but connection with interoception go for the sake of either work or these little nudges that our body was giving us of inflammation that we ignore until I don't know how many people I saw retire from healthcare and then be diagnosed with cancer shortly thereafter. And it's because they ignored a lot of the early signs of cancer. And this is something that we see more and more, and even so with our kids. So, here are five common symptoms of an overburdened liver in autism, which I think will be really helpful for some of you. Number one, skin issues is huge. So, if you look at things like eczema or chicken skin, those little red dots, rashes, yellowish skin tone, unless you're eating large amounts of beta carotene, we're looking at the potential that a liver is very overburdened. And if the skin is starting to turn yellow, then we know that there are some usually blocked passages within the liver in the bile duct. So the second sign is usually some digestive distress. So we know that kids on the spectrum generally either suffer from constipation or diarrhea or a mixture of both, but that their bowel movements are not very consistent and steady. And so chronic constipation or even the color of their stool being gray or excessive bloating, these are actually also signs of liver burden because the liver controls how much stomach acid is produced, the quality of the stomach acid through the bile duct. So, if that is not being digested properly, then it's actually also stemming from the liver. Very ignored, a part that we don't ignore in the Blue Light Autism program. Mood and regulation issues, sudden aggression, irritability, and emotional outbursts after chemical exposure or certain foods that are highly processed, such as anything that has food colorants. These have to be processed by the liver. And so, what we do know is that there's a lot of receptor sites there. And so, it is very common for deregulated behavior to come from an overburdened liver. The fourth one is fatigue and low stamina. So this looks like being tired really easily after small activities and having really dark circles under the eyes. And then number five is sensory sensitivities. So heightened reactions to smell, noise, or light because toxins are triggering inflammation that spills over into the nervous system. So everything is all the filters are being, yes, they're already having issues because of usually nutritional deficiencies, but then tag on an overburdened liver and you're actually seeing even more of these. So if your child is covering their ears or running away from loud sounds, these are potentially some of the major things that we see and where we want to start supporting our kids. So, when we reduce the liver burden through food, gentle detox, and lifestyle changes, our kids often have more energy, calmer moods. They become much more connected with the ability to speak because they're no longer in fight or flight from an over toxicity standpoint. And they also have better digestion, which means they're also getting better nutrients to the brain. And for many families, that's when speech connection it really starts to emerge because the brain is finally has space to focus on development instead of fighting toxins. And I think that that's a really important thing to note. So I hope that this video gave you a little bit of insight on liver toxicity and how to tell if your child may be suffering from this. If you're seeing these signs in your child, you don't actually need another expensive test. You actually just need a plan to support their liver and their detox pathways safely. And that's exactly what we do in the Blue Life Autism program. Make sure to watch my free training below. It's the 3 secrets to autism gains. It is a very valuable training. It is 2 hours and completely free. And it walks you through the entire process of how we actually brought my son from being severe nonverbal to conversational and no longer even needing a diagnosis. So, if that is of interest to you, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and share it with another family who might be concerned that their child is suffering from an overburdened liver.